Hey, could somebody confirm that they can hear me and see me? Okay, cool. We have a few people. I'll give it 1 or 2 minutes before we get started with an intro. Thanks for joining, everybody. Cool. Thanks for confirming. I hope everybody's having a good weekend. Weather here has been great. It's been really nice to go out on some walks outside. All right, cool. I'm going to get started with intros and then let other people hop in as we go through this. So to start off, my name is Advait Maybhate, and I'm currently a Schultz leader at the University of Waterloo. I'm in my 2nd year of computer science, in the middle of my 2A and 2B terms. I'm currently on a co-op term, so I'm working remotely. I'm working on a search team at Google right now. And a bit of other fun facts about me. One fun fact is that I've been to 10 elementary schools. I traveled around a lot when I was a child, and these were kind of spread across 4 countries. So it was a lot of moving around, and it was really interesting to see kind of all the different curriculums. Of course, I would not want to repeat that experience in high school or in university. It would have been really tough to kind of keep on switching schools. And yeah, so I think we can kind of jump straight in. If anybody has any questions, I invite you to put them in the live chat, and I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. Otherwise, we also have a set of prepared questions that I'll go through. So to start off, I guess one of the things I wanted to talk about first was kind of why I'm interested in computer science and kind of what attracted me to this field and what gets me excited about it. So for me, growing up, I always loved kind of just logic and tackling kind of these hard mathematical problems. And so initially that drew me towards kind of the STEM fields. And more specifically for computer science, I found that it was just a really cool way to build anything you want, right? Like I remember I initially started coding in Scratch, and I could literally make like a pink fluffy unicorn fly across the screen if I wanted to. And I think it's this aspect of freedom that really draws me towards computer science, is because there's no limits on what you can do. It's just the limits of your imagination, basically. I guess if you are processing massive amounts of data, you might run into some processing power issues. But for the most part, it's just whatever you can imagine, you can build. And I think that aspect of freedom and that aspect of being able to create anything you want is really the most enticing aspect of computer science to me. And another comment there is that like I think of CS more as a tool rather than like kind of like a theoretical subject that you study, because in most cases you're not going to be like just studying computer science for the sake of computer science. Like you're not going to be like for the most part, most people are not working on like coming up with a new algorithm to traverse the binary search tree or something. For the most part, you can be using it to kind of solve some real world problems, or you might be creating these sort of data structures to solve some real world problems. So there's all the classic examples of kind of tools that we use every day, so like Google Maps, Google Search, and kind of file storage, Facebook, and everything else. And I think it's really cool how just a single kind of tool or topic can be so versatile and applied in so many different ways. And it is what still kind of brings me back, and then I still enjoy like learning so much more about computer science. And I think it's really interesting as well, I guess, right now to see kind of how it's applied in industry versus in university. And I think specifically right now as I'm on co-op, I get to see a lot more of how you apply kind of the software engineering principles on large-scale systems. Yeah, before I kind of move on to any other questions, did anybody have questions on kind of computer science or any specific questions about what I'm doing right now, or? Cool. Yeah. Okay. For now, I'll move on to another prepared question. So another question that I thought was really interesting was kind of where I see Canada's biggest, or more generally, the world's biggest challenges when it comes to software. And it's been, I think there's a lot of interesting topics that we can touch on here. But some of the things I'm most excited about are also some of the things I'm most scared about with respect to kind of advancements in the field of computer science. And so things like, for example, self-driving cars, right, is a topic that I think, or something that I'm very excited about, but at the same time, there's a lot of fear out there with regards to how safe it will be, if we'll have enough regulation, and that sort of thing. I guess another topic that comes to mind is kind of the whole issue around fake news and just spreading misinformation. And I think this has really been brought to light during COVID-19 and even before COVID-19. For example, with the elections, and I know specifically at Google right now, this is a massive focus for them, and I'm sure it is for Facebook and Twitter as well, is just being able to identify and differentiate between sources of truth and people or machines that are just trying to spread this kind of misinformation and misdirect people. Because many people do kind of believe everything that they see on the internet. And so I think that there's a lot of challenges here in that for the most part, technology is regarded, like, I think of it as a positive tool, but it also has the power to spread things really quickly. And this comes with the fact that you can spread kind of misinformation really quickly, and you can spread, in some cases, kind of propaganda on kind of racist groups or any kind of groups that might be promoting any kind of violence or hate. And so I think figuring out a better way to kind of regulate and I would say not censor, but to identify these types of content and be able to remove it and deal with it appropriately is a very big challenge that I think everybody right now is trying to tackle. And it's very interesting because it comes down to to essentially like solving the problem of the English language. And so from a natural language processing perspective, it's a very cool problem to tackle. I know there's I've been reading a few papers on kind of how existing algorithms are looking at this problem and how they're tackling this right now, but it's just so vast because the English language itself is so complicated, and understanding it both syntactically and semantically is a very tough problem. Okay, cool. Yeah, we got a question from Robin. Does machine learning play a role in the searching algorithm? Yes, it does. So as an intern on Google Search, I don't have too much of an inside scoop into how the search algorithm works, but I definitely I can go through it on a high level. So for the most part, yes. Right now, Google Search is a large part of it is based on machine learning models, and so there's a couple of advantages here. It kind of grows better over time, right? It has so much data because we have billions of users using it that we're able to kind of figure out whichever results are the best. So for example, we use things such as there's this concept of glue. So if you are clicking on a web page, then like how long are you on that web page, for example? And also like churn, so looking at whether the first result that you found was kind of the result that you're looking for, and in order to make sure that you didn't need to like go back and search for something else and then go to that next result. So there's a lot of user data that is of course all anonymized, and there's no way that kind of anybody at Google can track it back to who made this search query and who made that search query and that sort of thing. But it's amazing like to see kind of how they utilize this data in their models. And I'm not exactly sure in terms of how the machine learning models themselves work, but that's definitely a large part of it. There are also a lot of deterministic kind of signals. So the most famous one you might know of is PageRank. That was one of the kind of initial algorithms that was published in a paper by Larry Page and Sergey Brin back in 1999, back when they founded Google. And that's also a very interesting algorithm where it's better than machine learning in the sense that you kind of have a better idea of what's happening. And for some context, if you don't know about PageRank, the way that it works is basically it looks at all the links that you link out to within a web page. So for example, a Wikipedia web page might have a very high PageRank score just because a lot of other web pages on the internet might reference Wikipedia. And so it essentially builds this kind of massive graph of the internet, and then it kind of weighs each page by how significant it is. and that significance is normally measured by how many other pages kind of refer to this page. And then kind of you can get the idea there that the more significant you are, the more you impact other pages that kind of reference you as well. So if you want to look deeper into it, there's the math behind it is really cool as well. It uses something called Markov chains in order to create these page rank scores for every single web page. And there's a lot of linear algebra there. So it's pretty cool to see kind of how a lot of these theoretical concepts that we learn in school, when I'm learning about them, it seems like I'll never use this, and it's probably not going to be useful. But I study some of these algorithms, or just look through some of the code at work, and it's really cool to see like things like matrices, for example, being used within PageRank, or stuff with like machine learning as well. It just uses a ton of linear algebra, a ton of calculus as well, and it's super cool to kind of go through all of that. Thanks for the question, Robin. Was there anything else I can clarify there? Sorry, I don't have a clear answer for how the search algorithm works. I think a lot of people would pay a lot of money to know exactly how the search algorithm works. But even Google doesn't really know how it works, because after all, the machine learning model itself is a black box of kind of information. And so we don't really know what's, in terms of what's happening within its hidden layers. Cool. Question from Jason. Thanks. What are some of the day-to-day challenges that you encounter as part of your career? This is a great question. And so I can kind of talk about some of the challenges that I faced early on in my career, and then talk about some of the challenges that I face right now, even though I'm still pretty early on in my career. But I remember with my first internship, so my first internship was at Christie Digital. It's this company that makes projectors. And specifically, I was working on a product that, if you've seen any of the light shows, like the Parliament Light Show in Ottawa, for example, that's something that we worked on. Or kind of light shows in hockey arenas where you're kind of broadcasting a ton of light onto the ice rink. So we're working on basically warping these projections in order for it to look good on the final surface. So you can imagine if you have the Parliament building, you have many curved surfaces, and you have many like obtrusions, and we're working on basically pre-warping all the projections to look right when you project it onto the building. And so it was a very cool problem, but I remember the first day of my internship. Like I was just, I got into the office, I sat down, and then one of the first things that struck me was just sitting at a desk for 8 hours was really tough, right? So I think software is very much, for the most part, kind of a desk job. And so that was one of the first things that struck me going into the industry, because so far in high school or in even in university, like it's much more interactive, right? For the most part, like you're able to kind of ask your professor questions, and then and you have like group projects and all that sort of thing, and you have like in high school specifically, you have like gym classes and like a diversity of classes. But then industry is quite a bit different. Like you are basically coding for the majority of the day. So I think something that helped me with this was the fact that I had some awesome coworkers. So I think that's a very important thing that you should look for when you're kind of assessing a company, is kind of the people you're working with. And because you're going to be working with these people for like full time every single day, and you want to make sure that you don't get burnt out, because I think it's really easy if you just focus on kind of just coding and solving problems to get burnt out really quickly. And so the way to kind of avoid this, I think, is to build kind of meaningful relationships with other people. So kind of sitting down for lunch, just talking to somebody about how their day is going, or talking about some technical problem that you're facing is, I think, very important. Because sometimes we think that like things like math and computer science are very individualistic, and everybody's like working on their own problem and solving this. And in schools especially, sometimes it can feel like that. Because for kind of assignments where you only have one person, you're not supposed to be working with anybody else. You might be just debugging it for hours on end. But in industry, you should remember that your manager, for example, is there to help you. All of your coworkers are there to help you. And they, especially right now, for example, they have a lot more experience than me. They might have like 20 or 30 years of software experience, right? So it's very likely if I'm stuck on a problem for more than an hour, it's much easier to just go talk to them, and they'll be able to help me with it. So that's one of the other things that I'm working on as well personally is like just having the courage to do that, right? It can be tough, especially at a large company. For example, right now at Google, my initial perception of Googlers was very like these are kind of geniuses, and I was very intimidated by Googlers. And I think it's easy to have that perception going into any software company, especially for some of your first internships or your first full-time job as well. And it's very easy to fall into that trap of kind of imposter syndrome. And I think you should try hard to like not think in those lines, and you should not be afraid to lean on others for any kind of advice, any kind of help. And I remember there's like so many dumb questions I asked my coworkers, right? And there's not been like, yeah, I don't remember any time that anybody's actually told me that a question has been dumb or like that I should have been able to figure that out on my own. And everybody's been super helpful. And even if they're working on something that's very important, like a very important job on their side, they'll be willing to kind of hop on a quick call or answer a quick ping. So yeah, I think that's a very important aspect there. So another question from George. Thanks, George. What was your process to applying to Google and eventually landing that internship? So yeah, I think I was definitely really lucky. I think with any large company like Google or like Facebook or like Amazon, they have just so many qualified candidates, right? And they cannot accept every one of the qualified candidates. So for the most part, their interview processes are designed to eliminate false positives. So this means that they are not trying to hire people that would not be a good fit for Google. And it's okay if they miss a few people that might be a good fit. And so the problem with this kind of pipeline is that you potentially get put into one of those people that might be a good fit, but then their interview process just didn't work for you. So I think, personally, I think many of these large companies have somewhat broken interview systems right now with regards to, for example, like Google, much of the interview is based on the traditional kind of algorithmic aspect. So it's the traditional kind of questions that you see on LeetCode or HackerRank. And so it's these questions where you're like trying to solve some algorithmic problem. And I think these are very valid questions, and they kind of test your base CS knowledge. But at the same time, they're not really relevant to what you're going to be doing in industry. Like I don't think I'm going to be doing an in-order traversal of a binary search tree or something for the most part when I'm working on the job, just because somebody has written a library to do this, or somebody has solved this problem already. But I do think they test your, for the most, like with my Google, specifically with the interviews that I had for Google, for example, I think they focused on the right parts, which was trying to understand how I think. And so that was the biggest thing that I found for any of my interviews at Google or elsewhere, is making sure that the interviewer sees how you think. And so for the most part, this means communicating all the time. So for Google specifically, they make you write in a Google Doc, which can be really painful, just because you don't have any syntax highlighting and that sort of thing. But one thing that I tried to make sure that I did was just be very explicit whenever you're writing stuff down, right? I kind of go through the thought process in my head. So generally for any algorithmic problem, it comes down to initially like thinking of a brute force solution. Might not code this, but I just talk about like what's the easiest way I can think of to solve this. It might not be the most efficient, but here's just one solution that might work. I go through the thought process with the interviewer, and many times like they're there to help me as well, right? Like they don't want you to fail. So I found many interviewers are willing to help and point out like any small mistakes I have in my logic, or when I'm writing code, they're like, think more about this, or ask me some guiding questions that lead me in the right direction. So don't be afraid to kind of lean on your interviewers as well. They want to see, their final objective, I believe, is to see if you're a person that they would like working with, right? So can you take this ambiguous problem? Can you clarify all the nuances? And then can you build an efficient solution for it? And it's okay if you rely on them for help, right? In the work environment, you're going to be relying on your coworkers, you're going to be relying on internet resources and all sorts of other things. So don't think of it as a purely academic environment where you're trying to solve this problem. And then I guess with regards to the application process itself, I can talk a bit about how Google structures it. So initially you have your coding challenge. So this is kind of, I believe it was 2 questions. And so it's your pretty standard kind of algorithmic 2 questions. Generally, they're not too difficult. So you kind of go through that. And then there was a behavioral kind of questionnaire where you just talk about, like they give you a bunch of situations, and you have just a short answer responses on how you would handle them. And then this is, I think, the first level of screening. And then after that, if you pass that level of screening, you go on to the actual phone interviews. So I had 2 back-to-back phone interviews that were both 45 minutes each. You get like a 15-minute break in between. And these are held over Google Docs. at least that were back when I did them. And then, yeah, you're talking with the other interviewer over the phone. Yeah, as I said, like make sure you understand the question, clarify any of your assumptions, talk about your brute force solution, then dive into your implementing an efficient solution, talk about like how you would test it as well. In many cases, it might be more beneficial to come up with tests before you actually dive into the solution, because it can help you think about any of the edge cases before you start implementing this, the question. And it shows the interviewer as well. You're thinking about all the aspects where there might be some parts that might break your algorithm. And then, yeah, after you've implemented it, they'll probably talk to you a bit about your resume, your kind of projects, and everything else. And then after that stage of those two interviews, it goes on to the hiring committee. So this is just the way that it works at Google is that your interview packet basically gets sent to this committee that looks at it and decides whether you should proceed on to the next stage. And so this does not include your interviewers normally. So that's very important to realize, is that your interviewers will be writing down this written feedback in their own document, and they'll be sending this off to another committee that looks at this written feedback in addition to your resume and some of your other resources that you provided, and then they make a decision on whether to proceed or not. And then after the hiring committee, you do host matching interviews. So again, this can be a pretty frustrating part of the process as well, is that you don't directly get an offer. You need to actually match with a specific team at Google in order to get the offer, at least for the C position. That's a software engineering intern position. And so last summer when I was at Google New York, I interviewed with, there was a couple teams in Mountain View and a couple teams in New York. And yeah, there's like tons of product areas, right? So there's like Google Drive, Google Photos, all sorts of other product areas if you're interested in them. And then you kind of see if it's a mutual fit. This is not really meant to be a technical call. And yeah, it's really a low stress kind of call. And then if your manager thinks you're a good fit, if you think you're a good fit for the team, then that's where your recruiter will help you draft the offer. So it's a pretty long process. But yeah, I think for the most part, they do a pretty good job of kind of finding the right people. But definitely don't be disappointed, right? If you don't get on your first time around, I know many people who have gone through the kind of Google or Facebook's or any other big companies interview process many times. And so don't be afraid to give it another shot. And they're not going to hold it against you if you reapply. Question from Peter. Do you think cold emailing could work for landing an internship? Yes, I think like cold contact in general is a very good strategy, right? I've used this to some extent for a few internships in the past. Yeah, I'm trying to think of an example. Yeah, there's been instances where I've like just reached out to random people on LinkedIn, and I think an important thing to remember here is that you don't want to, when you're cold emailing somebody or cold connecting with them over LinkedIn, for example, you don't want to directly start off with like, I'm interested in an internship, like how do I apply, and like, can you help me provide a referral or something? You definitely want to start on some common thread that you're interested in, and you want to learn more about the company as well, right? This is especially if it's a company that you don't know much about or a team that you don't know much about, you should ask them some technical questions perhaps about what they work on. And I think, like personally, I would be more willing to talk to somebody if they kind of came to me and asked me what I'm working on with this team and like what I think some of the challenges might be and that sort of thing, right? As opposed to somebody I don't know, coming to ask for like a referral or coming to apply to the company directly. So I think, yeah, definitely reaching out to kind of software engineers or anybody, right? This applies to non-software fields as well. Is a very valid strategy. And many times these people might actually be better than your traditional recruiter, right? Because the traditional recruiter, their inbox is getting flooded, right? They literally like when I was talking to my Google recruiter and they get like, I don't know, it's over like 50, 100 emails a day at least. And so they're trying to parse through all of that, and they are trying to keep up with all of that, and they might not have time to just respond to a request from a random person. Whereas like an engineer at a company, for example, doesn't do that on a day-to-day basis, so they might be much more receptive to those kind of inquiries. So I think it's definitely a valid avenue to pursue. Of course, it definitely helps if you have a somewhat of a warm connection. So you should try to utilize your network to find those warm connections. And I know, for example, like with Scooter Digital, many of my coworkers there kind of left, and they went on to Thalmic Labs, which is another startup later on, now named North. And that's how I got my internship at North, was just by knowing some people that were at Christie, and they kind of knew my work style and kind of the stuff that I'd done at Christie, and they were willing to vouch for me at Dalmuk. So I think, yeah, just remember, just build your professional network as you go through university and through your professional life, and make sure to kind of utilize that when you're looking for new opportunities. And at the same time, yeah, don't be too close-minded, right? You shouldn't be, at least in your earlier years, I don't think you should be focusing on a specific type of niche role or niche position. Try to keep an open mind, and who knows, like you might like doing something that you are not familiar with, like product management or project management, or like all the other kind of streams associated with the software world. Cool. Those were some awesome questions. If anybody has any follow-ups on those questions as well, feel free to drop them in the chat. Yeah, I was kind of rambling on, so I'm not sure if I covered everything that everybody was hoping to answer there. Cool. Does anybody have any other questions? Yeah, sure. Question from George. Would I be able to elaborate more on the visa process for applying to U.S. or international companies? So I can talk specifically about U.S. And a bit about international as well. So for the U.S., if you're a Canadian citizen, or even if you're an international student, the visa for the most part you'll be looking to get is the J1 visa. And so this visa is used for internships. And I think the official term for it is a trainee. And so normally your company will help you with this. So with Google, for example, I did not have to kind of worry about all the legal stuff. There was just a bunch of stuff that I worked with. I know they employed Deloitte to help them with the process as well. And there's visa sponsors. So there's a bunch of these companies like Cultural Vistas or Intrax that kind of help sponsor your visa. And so they take the official responsibility of you being in the U.S. And so the company that you're working for will use one of these companies most likely, and they will kind of guide you through the process of submitting all of your official documents, so like things like your passport and things like your travel history and that sort of thing. And the people are super nice. It's not a very tedious process. Yeah, just make sure that you kind of are aware of all the timelines, because it can take. I think, yeah, for my visas it took like 2 months for the most part, or 1 or 2 months. So yeah, make sure you kind of keep up with all the requirements. If you are an international student, I believe you will need to go to like a U.S. consulate in Canada, and there's like a short interview that you need to do there. It's not like a technical interview or anything. They just ask you about like why are you going to the U.S. and that sort of thing. So I think for the most part, it's a pretty painless process. Of course, with kind of the recent immigration changes this year, I'm not sure if that's going to affect kind of internships going forward. I think for the most part, Canadians are not affected by the changes recently. But yeah, I think COVID-19 has definitely changed the situation to some extent. And with regards to international companies as well, yeah, this summer I was actually originally going to be in Switzerland at the Zurich office for Google. So I did go through the visa process there, and it really depends on each country as well. But yeah, for the most part, they'll connect you with some company. Again, in my case, it was Deloitte. That helps you go through this process, and they ask for all of your like associated documents, so like things like your transcript, things like your proof of enrollment for university, and that sort of thing. And so it's pretty painless for the most part. Just make sure that you kind of just keep up with all the emails and communication from them. Cool. Was there anything else? I think another topic that I want to touch on, this was in the prepared questions, was kind of choosing the right company. So I think that this is, I'm going to specifically talk about more of the software kind of field as a whole. I think it's a very big challenge to choose the right company to work at. And I've been in my last few internships, I've been fortunate to work at some large companies, and then last term I was at Social Capital, working under the startup called Happy. And this was a very tiny company. My manager was only the other engineer there, And it was really this basically opposite end of the spectrum from something at Google, where like we had like no unit tests, we had no documentation, and that sort of thing. So it was definitely much more kind of ad hoc development. But at the same time, like we were able to push out stuff to production every single week, right? There was no like there's no processes bogging me down, and I was actually able to see the impact of my features in production. And so there's a lot of advantages there as well. And so I think it definitely comes down to kind of personal preference, is that like whether you want to be making this massive impact at a smaller company, or you want to kind of make these potentially smaller changes, but potentially impact a lot more people, since just because like a product like Google Search, billions of people are using it, right? So like a tiny change that I make there will potentially affect millions of people. And I think there's definitely pros and cons on both sides. I know with the startup, I was able to also get a lot more exposure to kind of the product side of things, which is really cool, to kind of get more of an idea on why I'm working on something. Because I know, for example, at Google, normally I'm given some sort of internship project and there might be some ambiguities there, but for the most part, the product aspect is quite well defined. So like why we need this feature, exactly like how's the user going to use this and that sort of thing. It's more so like the engineering challenges that we're still working through. But on the other hand, with the startup, at Happy last term, I was working with the team to basically define what are the next features that will help us the most. So for converting users into paid users, for improving our Facebook advertising kind of funnel down to kind of installing the app and getting users to go through our sign-up process, and how can we kind of minimize friction there. So it was a lot of like looking through the data, looking at what are the points in this process where users normally drop off at, and then what are some features that we can work on to kind of improve those pain points for users. So it was really cool to kind of get exposed to that product side aspect as well, and then go out and after ideating on kind of what features we want, actually go out and build those features. So it was, much more free form, I guess, and definitely gave me a lot more responsibility than I had at a larger company. Yeah, I think personally, just to talk a bit more about like my strategy for choosing companies as well. Since Waterloo has a ton of internships, we go through kind of 6 co-ops. I think my primary objective is going to be to have as much diversity as possible, right? So I want to try out all sorts of companies in terms of the size, their location, in terms of kind of what field they're in. So far I've been working in kind of the consumer product space. I would also be interested in trying out a few internships in the enterprise product space. I'm also interested in bioinformatics, which is kind of combining biology with computer science. And so I'm taking a couple of courses at university for this. And I'm hoping to get some industry experience as well to see if this is something I like. And I think internships and co-ops are the best way to kind of, similar to sampling food, right? It's the best way to sample a ton of things and figure out what you like, what you don't like. And if you don't like something, it's fine. You're only in the internship for like 3 or 4 months, and you make the best of it, and you can potentially learn some things, and you can kind of move on. And it's much better than kind of going to a full-time job and realizing that you don't like something at that point. So I'm really fortunate that like Waterloo has this call program, and even if your university does not have a call program like this, I strongly encourage you, if you're interested in working in industry, to kind of take your summers and try to find these opportunities, right? I think there's this misconception that you need like a university job board sometimes to find these internships. So Waterloo has Waterloo Works, for example, and although Waterloo Works is really useful and can potentially be like a good source to find just a combined list of internships from a bunch of companies that are interested in recruiting students from Waterloo, it's not the end-all and be-all, and for the most part, these companies also list their positions on their company website. So if your university does not have like that sort of job board, then definitely I don't think it's a problem. You should just apply externally to directly on company websites for all these companies, and don't give up, right? I know you can, if somebody looks at my resume, they kind of see all these successes, but for the most part, I failed at most of my interviews, right? So I remember in my first year, I sent out, I think it was around this scale of around 80 to 90 applications, and I got I think it was 6 or 7 interviews, out of which I got 2 or 3 offers. So it was definitely a massive drop off there. And so I was really fortunate. I ended up being able to accept an offer at Google, but you definitely don't just look at the surface level when you see kind of other people's accomplishments, and don't be afraid to kind of fail at a bunch of things, and just send out a ton of applications because it's fine. Hopefully one of them works out, and that's all you need. You only need one to be successful. George has a question regarding applying online. I heard that it's more like a black hole of applications. Is that true? And what is the better alternative? So yeah, I think I've definitely heard this as well. I think it's true to some extent, especially for larger companies, where they have this generic application portal that somebody can submit resumes to. But it can definitely be hard for them to kind of go through and filter through that and pick out your resume or your application specifically. So I think with those companies, yeah, I can help to kind of cold email, cold contact people, or find those connections somehow that will help you somehow differentiate your application in some way, right? That could be a referral. Like a referral, I think normally helps your application at least get looked at and can help you until the interview stage. Of course, after that, I don't think a referral really matters for the most part. Like they're really looking at how you do in the interview and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think in terms of like for smaller companies, I don't think it's much of a black hole. Their application volume isn't that as big, and it's really nice for a lot of companies. Like they try to respond to you even if it's a rejection. So I really appreciate when kind of companies respond even though if it's a rejection. And yeah, I'm not sure exactly like what the best way to tackle this problem is. I know it definitely depends on the company. I guess volume and just quantity is the best way here. Is to just shoot out as many applications as you can. Be really open to what you're applying, where you're applying, and yeah, I think many times even if you think that you might not want to take an offer at some company, it could be good interview practice, right? So don't be afraid to over apply. It's not like you're gonna be forced to take the offer if you do get it. And so I know, yeah, many of my interviews have been great interview practice, and sometimes the interviewers even offer suggestions at the end, right? To like, how could I improve next time? And yeah, just doing practice and mock interviews as well has helped a lot. But yeah, this is a good question. Sorry, I don't really have a clear answer on how to tackle this. But yeah, I think the best bet here is to kind of find employees of the company on LinkedIn or through some other channel, right? Besides just their application portal, and reach out to them there, show why you're interested. So for example, you might be using the product, right? So it's like something like Figma, I use the product, I think it's a very cool product, I would love to kind of work on it. So it's very important to kind of, I think, show why you want to apply to this company. And another question that I get a lot, I've gotten before is kind of whether cover letters are useful. Right. I think they're useful if you have a specific motivation for applying to a company. So sometimes I'm applying to just a generic company that I don't know much about, but in other cases, there's a specific motivation I have, right? So whether it's like a bioinformatics company and I'm really interested in bioinformatics, then in the cover letter I can talk about like other stuff I've done in the field in the past and like why I'm specifically interested in your company. If I've used their product before and I really like it, and there's some things that I think we could improve, like that's kind of what you should talk about in your cover letter. Like it should not be a rehash of your resume. That's something that I see a lot of people doing sometimes, is just kind of rehashing everything that they've gone through on the resume. Your cover letter should be specifically targeted towards the company, and you definitely don't need it for all companies, right? I think for the many companies they don't require it, and I think you should only attach it if you think it provides value, and if you think it's targeted and somebody would enjoy reading it, right? Like, would you enjoy reading your own cover letter if you got it for some position? It should be like a story on why you want this position and stuff that relevant stuff you might have worked on with regards to the team or company. Any other questions? Yeah, so another kind of prepared question that we had beforehand was what my ideal career path looked like. So I think this is a very tough question. I think, yeah, I still don't really have a good answer to this, but yeah, as I mentioned, I want to try out as many things as possible during my co-ops, and then afterwards, I think straight out of university, I want to join kind of a small to medium-sized company where I'm able to kind of get a lot of responsibility, and so get my hands on a whole bunch of things and kind of break stuff, kind of work on some cool stuff, build out some really cool projects, and work with some cool people. And I think my primary kind of dimension that I'm evaluating companies on is kind of my opportunity for growth and learning, because especially early on in your career, I think those are kind of two most important things. And so of course there's like other things like location, compensation, and everything else. But I think those are the two biggest things I'm going to be looking at. So hopefully I can find a company that kind of aligns with my values and what I'm looking for through my internship experiences. But that's kind of where I'm headed immediately. And then after that, yeah, I'm really not sure. Yeah, I want to try out as many things as possible. Hopefully work on products that kind of improve somebody else's life in some way, right? So with Google Search, we're trying to make the world's information more accessible. With Happy, this is a mental health app where we were working on, it's kind of like a suicide helpline, except more for maintenance and less acute kind of purposes. And so it was awesome to see kind of the people that were using our product and just how we were able to help all these people. So I think that's another big motivator for me, is being able to find that company that's working on a product that I personally use or I personally really believe in, and that it can help a lot of people. No problem, George. Thanks for all the questions. Yeah, anybody else have any questions on, I guess, something we haven't touched on yet is kind of extracurriculars or kind of more university life in general? Yeah, I can touch on this a bit as well. Personally, for me, one of my biggest kind of passions has been hackathons, and this was one of the things that also brought me into the world of CS, was just being able to create these really cool projects at hackathons. And so I remember back in high school, when I went to my first hackathon, I got carried by these two other teammates who were, back then they were seniors in high school, and I had no clue what was going on. We were building this Android app, and it was my first time kind of working with Java specifically. And we built this Android app. It was a very classic kind of idea where we were building this event finder. And so we were working with this Maps API where we wanted to show people events close to them. And so it was a really basic, looking back on it, it was a really basic kind of product, and really not too complicated technically. But I remember back then I was so grateful for just being able to have a couple of mentors there, and just learning from them on like how do I use Android Studio, for example? How do I create my Hello World Android app, and like how to hook up an API, and like graphics, and yeah, all sorts of things. And so after that, I remember I kind of got somewhat addicted to hackathons. I went to a ton in high school. I met a whole ton of cool people. That was the other big thing, right? Was getting involved in the hackathon community really exposes you to so many amazing people. And these are people working on some amazing stuff. And so I really encourage you guys, if you do go to a hackathon, don't just focus on your project. Like, try to talk to as many people as possible, both hackers, sponsors, judges, the organizers, and everybody else at the hackathon, because all these people will have very unique stories, and there's a lot of insights you can get. And who knows, like, they might be really beneficial connections later on. I know back in 2017 and 2018, when I went to Hack the North as a hacker, I think this was 2018, I spoke with NCR a bit, and then this is a company that works on financial transactions, and we had a good conversation about, I was asking them some technical questions about like how their API works, where they face some challenges with regards to the security aspect and that sort of thing. And then they followed up with me after the event, and we were able to actually set up an interview. I went to their office, and I was actually able to get an offer. And so just things like that, right? You never know like what talking to somebody might lead to. I definitely use like hackathons as a hotspot to meet those amazing people. Of course, there's a ton of free food as well, which is a really nice aspect of hackathons. You just get to eat a ton of junk food over kind of 36 or 48 hours or whatever it may be, and just hang out with some really cool people and work on some real world projects that I think really open my eyes to what CS can be used for outside of just kind of what you learn in school. Because in school, many times I find we focus on like, I don't know, building a compiler, or focusing on like graphs and all these kind of abstract algorithms, and focusing on like maximizing efficiency in terms of time and space. But many times in industry, that's not really your focus. Your focus is to build a product and satisfy users' need. So it's really nice that with the hackathon, where that's what your focus is. So you're working on building those products. You're working on satisfying whatever problem you've came up with. And so it's much more like an industry environment, and it's much closer to what I do on co-ops than school environment would be. At the same time, I think school has been super valuable. Like it's definitely taught me a lot of the underlying stuff and how it works. And one of the biggest things I've learned as well is like just learning how to learn. I think that's a massive thing that you learn from university and high school. Do you have any other questions? Sorry if you feel like I'm rambling on, feel free to ask me really targeted kind of questions, and hopefully I can give you some good answers. Yeah, talking a bit more about my extracurriculars. I also got involved with the hackathon organizing scene. So this is something in my grade 11 year, we co-founded Jam Hacks, which is this hackathon in Waterloo with a couple of other friends. And this was one of my first times kind of organizing a large scale event. And we had like 100 hackers there, and it was just so awesome to be able to kind of learn all the aspects of organizing an event. And it was really interesting to being on the other side as well with organizing a hackathon. And it's definitely more stressful in some ways and less stressful in others. I remember, yeah, just like random things that you should expect everything to fail when you're organizing an event. And then later on, I went on to help with Startup Hacks, and now I'm helping with Hack the North at Waterloo. Cool. Got a question from Jason. How do you balance exploring new skills and becoming an expert in one area? Yeah, I think this is a really good question. I think this is definitely something that I'm working on tackling myself. I think, yeah, there's definitely a delicate balance here. I think in your undergrad career, at least, you should not be trying to specialize too much in one specific area, right? With regards to that, I think there's, specifically in software, there's a bunch of levels that you can specialize at. So for example, right now, most of my co-ops and internships have been back-end development, and that's where I spend most of my time. But within that, there's like so many different facets, right? And kind of different types of companies you can work at. And so I think that, yeah, my objective so far has been to go wide and get as much exposure as I can. At the same time, with regards to getting depth, I think this is something that hopefully you're able to get some depth at each of your internships, and you're able to kind of dive deeper into those problems and learn more about how a specific stack works, like using React with Node.js or something, and get more kind of contextual knowledge there. But yeah, I think throughout undergrad, I don't think you should be too worried about becoming an expert in a specific field, because yeah, I think no matter I might be making a broad generalization here, but for the most part, I think by the end of your undergrad, you won't be a world-class expert in your field. So rather than trying to attempt that, I think you should be focusing on just trying out as many things as possible, and then after that, whether you go into industry and then you have the chance to kind of focus on one area and become an expert there, or you could continue education and do a master's or PhD. I'm personally not sure what avenue I'm going to take yet, but yeah, that's my kind of perspective on things. I think there's definitely different approaches that work for different people. This is just what I've found worked best for me, has been trying to get exposed to as many things as possible, and figure out what I don't like and do like, and then hopefully after I graduate, I'm able to focus on that much more. Great question though, Jason. Thanks for the question. Yeah, if anybody had any other questions. Oh wow, I just noticed we were 50 minutes in. It's gone by really quickly. There's another question we had beforehand was, do you have any mentors, and how did you obtain and benefit from them? So I think for the most part, I didn't really have any. Yeah, I didn't really have any official I didn't join any official mentorship programs. But I would say I definitely had a ton of mentors throughout my career so far, and I don't think you need to have like an official they don't need to be labeled as a mentor for them to be a mentor, right? So all of my managers in my internships have been awesome mentors. They've like taught me stuff technically. They improved my soft skills in terms of collaboration, kind of writing design docs, working with other people. How do I get other people to do stuff for me? How things work just in the software industry as a whole. And then like other coworkers have been awesome mentors as well. And everybody's just been super like helpful so far in kind of the companies I've been at, and I don't think anybody is going to hesitate if you just reach out, ask to have a coffee chat or something, and then you just ask them like, what's your career path, right? Like ask them about what they've done in the past and how do they evaluate opportunities? How do they end up where they are right now? And why do they like working here? What's some of the cool kind of maybe technical problems they worked on in the past couple of weeks? That you would find interesting and that sort of thing. And so yeah, I think my work experiences have given me tons of helpful mentors. Teachers have been another great source of mentorship. So I think outside of just the academic aspect of teaching, I think your teachers, like your professors, will be willing to kind of answer any kind of it depends on the professor as well, but there have been professors and teachers that I've talked to about many non-academic kind of things I'm facing as well. So whether that be like, I guess, well, yeah, choosing between different opportunities or talking to them about kind of how they ended up where they are, if you're interested in academia and that sort of thing. So I don't think you should like think of just finding one mentor and sticking to them. I think you should treat everybody that you meet as kind of a mentor. And I know even my close friends, for example, right? I ask them for like advice on stuff that they might know better than me. And there's a ton of things that they know better than me. So I think you should not be afraid of asking for help from others and just learning from other people's experiences. Because I think that's one of the best ways to learn, right? Like you could go through and read a ton of Wikipedia pages on some like abstract concept you're trying to understand, but nothing's going to compare to a human explaining something to you. Yeah, another question that we had beforehand was talking about other extracurricular experiences. For example, studying abroad, research conferences, and other sorts of experiences along those lines. So yeah, I was originally planning on studying abroad next year. I'm not sure if that's going to happen with COVID-19, but I think from what I've heard from friends, it's an awesome experience, and I definitely like. Yeah, I think when you're young, it's awesome to be able to travel around. I know through my co-ops, like I loved being in New York last year, where I kind of really enjoyed at least for a temporary amount of time, I really enjoyed being in a big city, just having all the nightlife and yeah, just so many awesome food spots in New York as well, and it was just a great experience. I'm not sure if I would want to live in a big city full time. I think it was definitely kind of like so I guess it was just gray everywhere. There wasn't too much greenery, although they're trying to improve that with Central Park and everything else. But yeah, I think it's just finding those types of opportunities are a great way to explore the world and meet other people that you might not have the same culture, right? I think they might think in many different ways, and you can get exposed to kind of different perspectives there. Yeah. And with regards to research as well, I'm planning to do some part-time research. I haven't gotten to that yet, but in high school I remember I really loved doing kind of science fairs with bioinformatics. So I was looking at some stuff with kind of DNA structure. So I was looking at some motifs and patterns within DNA. And then I was also looking at protein structures, so looking at protein binding sites and how drugs can be used to kind of block certain things from binding to proteins. So yeah, before I dive into kind of bioinformatics, I definitely want to get more experience in both the research side of things and industry. Cool, we're coming to the close to the end of this AMA. We have around 5 or 6 minutes. Yeah, if anybody else has any questions, any fun questions as well. I know this pandemic has definitely changed our lives in a very meaningful way. I think, yeah, I know personally as well. There's definitely some positive things I've been trying to focus on, is like picking up new hobbies, just because I've got some more time. I started baking recently, and I made this like massive 4-layer chocolate cake and this monster cookie and stuff. And it's a great way of giving myself an excuse to eat more sweet stuff. And my mom thinks that I'm learning how to cook, so it's awesome. Um, but yeah, I hope everybody is staying healthy and staying safe throughout this pandemic. Yeah, I guess on that topic, another thing I want to touch on as well was kind of how this will affect the software industry as a whole. I think we've already seen this to a large extent with like the most obvious connotation is like companies like Zoom, things like products like Microsoft Teams and Google Meet. I know Google right now is focusing massive amounts of effort on Google Meet and improving that. And yeah, so I think more generally, like it's gonna be interesting to see kind of the work from home impact of this as well. I know Shopify in Canada has already announced that they're permanently working from home, which is quite a big step. And I'm really surprised to see them kind of come out with this so early on. And I think they've already put up their billings release. I might be wrong on that though. It's somewhat sad because I think they expanded in Toronto and Waterloo just like last year, and they doubled the presence, and now they're permanently switching to working remotely. I think definitely as a young person, I kind of find it's tough to work remotely, right? It's harder to focus at home. It's harder because you haven't met the people you're working with in face to face, right? So I think you need to take more of an initiative to have those random interactions. You need there's much more of an onus on your part in order to meet people and in order to just make kind of those meaningful bonds, right? That will you may have had that may have been easier to make if you were in person. Of course, there's a lot of benefits on this as well, like free food and just the super cool offices are something that I'm definitely missing right now. But it's really fortunate that we're in software and we're able to all work remotely throughout this. A question from Jason. How to survive a goose attack? This is a great question. So for some context, if you don't know, University of Waterloo has been associated with Canadian geese just because we have a ton of geese on campus. And many times these geese can be very aggressive, especially during mating season. And so definitely as a UW student, I've gotten my fair share of kind of encounters with geese. So most recently, I remember I was kind of taking a walk through Waterloo Park, and there was just a ton of geese on the boardwalk beside the lake. And for some reason, me and my friends, we had this like super dumb idea to kind of just walk through the geese instead of going the long way around because we were like, it's gonna be fine. And everything was not fine, and these geese were very like I guess nothing happened to us, but these geese were very aggressive, and that was one of the scariest times in my life, where it's like just seeing like a geese like just turn around and just start squawking at you like super loud and just starts flapping its wings super hard. It's definitely a scary experience. I think for the most part though, they don't really normally attack you unless you're trying to kind of attack their nest or do some other actions to provoke them. So for a more practical tip, I would say, if you see a goose starting to get mad, just kind of slowly back away. Try not to stare them in the eye, especially if it's mating season. Yeah, the mother geese as well can be really aggressive. I know. Yeah, walking home at night, there's definitely been times where like I look at the top of a building and I see like geese staring down at me, and it's definitely a scary time. But of course, Mr. Goose is our unofficial mascot as well. So we do love Mr. Goose, and he does give us some great. We pray to him for exam marks every term, so it's awesome. Any other questions before we wrap it up? We have around 1 minute until we're hitting the 1 hour mark. Thanks everybody for coming out to this, and thanks for all the great questions. Time really flew by, and really love chatting about everything with you, all of you. Hopefully all of you got some value out of it as well. Yeah, if nobody else has any other questions, I guess I'll wrap things up. So yeah, just to end off, I think I'm hoping that everybody's staying safe, doing well throughout this pandemic, and yeah, definitely with regards to all of the stuff that I said throughout this AMA. this is all just my perspective. So I think there's many different approaches to kind of approaching how you evolve in your career and kind of decisions that you take. And so you should definitely try to find something that works for you. And yeah, just try to make the best use of your resources that you have. I think the Sherlock Network is an awesome place to kind of meet those people. I know I've definitely had some awesome leaders that I've met throughout the Sherlock Network. And so try to use all the resources that we're offering through the network and through any other networks that you may be a part of. And hopefully, yeah, I see you around. I'm not sure if I'll definitely see all of you around at Select CA. So thanks a lot. Cool, not sure. All right, bye.